Now what I'm going to do is to show you the information that's on page 72 of the textbook. So I've started with a clean score, but you can use the score that we annotated from the previous video if you'd like to. Well, you have no choice, so do that anyway. Okay, so from page 72, it says the first bar, it's talking about the melody, so I'm going to use green. And this is the melody here in the right hand of the piano part. It said that this melody is repeated up a fourth in bar 2. The rise in pitch over the first 4 bars adds to the passionate intensity of the music. So I'm just going to get my little text tool, and you can write this in. I'm going to say melody repeated up a fourth to show passionate intensity. Okay. Now the next thing says in bar 3, it repeats the opening melody from bar 1, but at a higher register, developing it over the course of bar 3 and the first part of bar 4, highlighting its dramatic potential by speeding up the harmonic rhythm and extending its register to the top A flat in bar 4. So I think we need to break that down because that's a lot of complicated information. So let's just have a look at each bit. Bar 3 repeats the opening melody from bar 1. So what you could do is get your green color, and again we're talking about melody, and then I'm going to just say repeats from bar 1. So that's fine. So it's exactly the same thing, but you'll see that what has happened is that in bar 1 it's down here on a middle C, and it's up an octave there. So I think what I'll say is up an octave. And that, of course, is to create the intensity. So then, going on, it talks about speeding up the harmonic rhythm. Now what that means is at the beginning, you only had one chord underneath this whole bit here. So this was a C minor chord. But what happens is the chords come faster in the next bar. So we're talking about harmony. So I'm going to get my pink color, and I'm going to just circle all of this stuff here. And what this is, it's 3 different chords. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's actually 4 different chords. So I'm going to say faster harmonic rhythm. So to try to explain that one more time, harmonic rhythm talks about how many chords you've got going on over a span of time. So there's a song from Matilda that you know, which goes That song uses the same chord for a long time. It actually only uses 2 chords in the whole piece. But here Beethoven is being clever, and he's speeding up the harmonic rhythm and having 4 chords happen within the space of 2.5 beats. And that heightens the dramatic potential. It says it extends the register up to the top A flat in bar 4. So what we're looking at is this note here. Let me get my pen. And because we're talking about the top note of the thing, I'm going to go back to green, which is our melody. So that is as far as it goes. That's the top A flat in bar 4. Something else that the textbook points out is that at this point in the music, you've got just an A flat sounding in the right hand against a B flat down below. And it's just 2 notes. But even though it's just 2 notes, that suggests, it sounds like to our ears, a B flat 7 chord. I wanted to make that pink, but it wouldn't do it. Let's just see if I can make it pink, because it's a harmony thing. There we go, it's pink. So right here, we've got a B flat 7 chord, and what that is, it's chord 5 in the key of E flat. So we're talking that kind of harmony that we've talked about in our compositions. So what's happening? Beethoven has started out the piece in C minor, and then here we get the 5 chord of E flat. Now, if you're being clever and smart, you know that the 5 chord is the relative major of C minor. So what I'm going to say here, move this over a bit, I'm going to say the B flat 7 leads to the key of E flat major. And I'll draw a little arrow even, because that is right here. When you get to bar 5, we're now in the key of E flat major. So all of this stuff here is in a lovely major key. Now you've labeled this before, but I'm just going to do it again to show you. The melody from the opening of bar 5 here is now in E flat major, and it's heard in a quieter, gentle version. So it's like the melody that we had at the beginning, but it's a quieter version until the sudden double F in the left hand. It's like a surprise, and it disrupts the quiet, peaceful melody. When the melody appears in bar 6 here, it's actually starting to go back to C minor. So harmonically, what's happening in the left hand is that these chords, you can see that there's sharps and natural signs written in. So that is, it's modulating back to the key of C minor. I'm going to say going back to C minor. So he started out in C minor in bar 1, and then through this little bar, he's modulating to E flat major, which is the relative major, and then after only 1 bar, he starts modulating back to C minor. Throughout bars 7 and 8, which is these 2 bars here, the melody climbs in pitch and dynamics. So it's going up in pitch. I'll just get my pen and my green for melody and just draw an arrow going up to show that the notes are getting higher and higher and higher. And also the dynamics are getting louder. So I'm going to get my red and circle this crescendo here. And what that is doing, it's leading us into the next bit. Now this goes on very dramatically, increasing in pitch and dynamics until we get to here. I'm just going to circle this chord, and you could do that on your score as well. That chord, if we read it from the bottom, is the notes G, B, and then I am looking to see, this is an F up here, that's an F. So G, B, and F. Those are 3 notes of the 4-note chord G7, and that is 5-7 in the key of C. So what I'm going to do is to label that 5-7 down there. So that's the dominant chord of the key of C minor. We've been doing this long enough to know that chord 5-7 very nicely leads on to chord 1. So you would expect a G7 chord to lead you comfortably to C minor. But guess what Beethoven does? Right here, ooh, I didn't want to do that, I'll undo. Right here, he doesn't do C minor. Instead, he does a very unexpected thing. He goes to chord 6 instead. And chord 6 in the key of C, let's count up, it's C, D, E, F, G, A flat. So it's an A flat major chord. And that means that this is an interrupted cadence. And it's so exciting that I'm going to put an exclamation mark there. So you're expecting it to go from chord 5 to chord 1, but instead it went to chord 6. And that just is a way of extending a piece, and if you wanted to use that in your compositions, it's a great idea to do. So chord 5 to chord 6 extends the piece. That's a really important thing to know, that interrupted cadence. We talked about it in the other video, but this little chromatic descent. It goes down 2 whole octaves. Bang, 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 bang. The textbook says the final bar features a 2.5 octave chromatic descent, and it lands on the note B natural down here. After a pause, the same B natural. So B natural is the leading note. It's the note that goes into the key of C. And there's another one right there. So those notes are getting you ready to go into the next bit here. And the next bit's on the next page, of course. And the next bit is when we get to the first subject in the exposition of the sonata form theme. So look at all this information that we have just about the introduction of the piece. Going over it again, repeated melody, it goes up a fourth to create dramatic tension, and then it's up an octave in the next bar. The harmonic rhythm increases here to 4 chords for 2.5 beats instead of 1 over a longer period. We get the B flat 7 chord, which leads you to the relative major of E flat here. We're going along very peacefully and quietly, and then suddenly Beethoven wants to shout, and so he gets louder here, does the same thing in the next bar. These chords down here lead us back into C minor, which is the tonic key of the piece here. The notes are rising gradually, and the crescendo is rising gradually to take us to a sudden 5-7 chord, a G7 chord. You'd expect that to lead you to C minor, but instead Beethoven plays a trick on us. He goes to chord A flat major, an interrupted cadence, great thing to know and do in your composition. And then finally, we have a descending 2.5 octave chromatic scale. So if we're talking about melody, there's a good thing to talk about. That lands on the note B natural, which is the leading tone in the key of C minor, which takes us into the next bit.